Is Gen Z more socialist or social democratic? Since Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential run, the term socialism has shed some of its Red Scare negative connotation. What with the internet providing more information regarding what the term actually entails, as well as some of its successes, as opposed to just the negatives that you might hear from Fox News. Not to mention the multiple recessions to occur under capitalism in the past 2 decades. Unprecedented wealth inequality and lack of action against global warming by government and corporations. Gen Z has already shown to be more socially progressive than past generations. And when paired with these factors, it is easy to understand why they are beginning to question the current state of capitalism. Nowadays, I constantly hear that Gen Z is socialist. But here in the United States, many tend to mash up definitions of socialism, Marxism, communism, and social democracy because of, as I previously mentioned, decades of Red Scare propaganda along with Bernie Sanders calling himself a democratic socialist, while running on a platform more reminiscent of social democracy. My question is, as Gen Z moves to the left, are they truly socialist or are they more social democratic in a similar vein as Bernie? Obviously there are a number that fall into both ideologies. But which do you see as being a better representation of Gen Z as a whole? And do you see that changing in the coming years? Social democratic, no doubt. But eyes are being exposed to real democratic socialism through various DSA chapters too. I am Gen Z but more of a centrist. I am okay with capitalism as long as there are regulations and protections for customers and workers. But I am also a fan of democracy and believe that the Electoral College should be abolished. I don't think they identify in that way at all. I think they are more concerned with how they can afford to live. For them the cost of everything is through the roof and their wages are still in the toilet. So when people ramble on about Democrats, Republicans, socialism, fascism and so on, they are just think how the fuck am I going to pay rent this month? In my experience, definitely more social democratic. Folks want universal healthcare and childcare, generous vacation time, and stronger regulations. However, although there's a lot of revolutionary rhetoric, I think their strongest calls amount to large protests and voting. I know a few folks who call themselves Marxist-Leninists. They post memes about guillotines but they're not active in anything outside of the occasional PSL meeting. However, being a social democrat in the US is hard enough. So props to them for moving the needle. This Generation Z or event my generation millennial doesn't understand the definition of free market or capitalism or even supply and demand. I didn't attend public schools so I have no idea what is being taught. But when I was in college and wanting to debate, I spent 90% of the time just defining terms that I thought everyone knew. I'm Gen's little center-right. But this generation doesn't know the difference between social democrat or democratic socialism. I said it before, many just want the most basic foundation of a welfare system, healthcare and etc. No one really wants to nationalize anything, they just want a fair system like Germans, Sweden etc. Following the German model would be beneficial. I enjoy capitalism but of course I want some regulation where it's needed. Social democrat, many don't understand what socializing a sector even means or any real examples. Except for a select few who know a short lists of like a theoretical expanded mail system and Vienna socialized housing and that's it. Bernie calls himself a democratic socialist, which is legit socialism while promoting the European equivalent to policy of social democrats pro-capitalists that in most multi-party European countries run against a much smaller democratic socialists party. He seems very confused and as a result so do most of his supporters. Public utilities are socialism. Public libraries, roads, firefighters, police, etc. I am a member of Gen Z and have consumed politics as a hobby since 2016. I identify as socialist. I support the abolishment of capitalism. Edit to give more context of how sure I am of this. I at one time was Trump's and anybody with R in their name biggest fan. I did not shy away from making my liking for Nazis and the Holocaust public at my high school. Right-wing pipeline completely devoured my brain at one point. And it's truly a miracle I ever became the opposite. To this day I still find myself occasionally repeating right-wing bullshit that I learned years ago. I remember reading something about the younger generation being more conservative. I think your assumption that Gen Z is more left is flawed. Millennials were more left-leaning than Gen Z, which is more prudish and conservative generally. Maybe it's just me, but the older I get, my priorities in life have caused my politics to shift a bit. When I was young and single, I cared far more about the rest of the world as opposed to myself. Now that I have a family, their needs come before anyone else. I'd like to keep more of my money because then I can put more away for my kids' future. Being in a very shitty public school district, I now understand why some parents want school vouchers, school choice. I could see others being this way, starting out as socialists then moving away from it as they get older. Mostly I think Gen Z are profoundly all-informed and uneducated about history and economics. More social democratic, but honestly they may even be just straight up neo-libs. I don't think I ever hear Gen Z talk about economics or economic inequality at all. It's all social justice issues and online activism. That's about as far as it goes for most, it seems. Most of the Gen Z late 90s babies I know are conservatives. College campuses do not represent the entire generation. I'm finding they're more heavily far right or far left, if that makes sense. Maybe a reflection of the times? Pretty much every self-proclaimed socialist is actually just a society dem with a lot of moralization and super vague and sometimes verifiably untrue talking points of the imperial core, exploitation of the global south, Western hegemony, etc. Social democratic for sure. I think it's turning out to be a huge mistake labeling these policies socialism with a capital S. While I totally understand the impulse to get out in front what they're going to call us anyway, but it's had a backlash. It's had a similar effect to calling police reform defunding, rousing for the educated, activist, and a turnoff for low information voters. Edit typos. As an outsider, I don't get the feeling that there is a lot of cohesiveness among Gen Z. Seems to be very tribal with wildly different perspectives of what defines a social contract. Regardless of eco-political moniker or philosophy, there needs to be a common agreement on right and wrong. There needs to be a facility that allows the community to function within those common standards and prevent community members from infringing on others' rights. Gen Z folks in the news anyway seem to push fringe social issues that divide and don't contribute to the betterment of society. Gen Z is still developing their most complex opinions about the world and have not really played their hands quite yet. We only get to see the loudest and online-est of them. It's plausible that there's a lot of hidden conservatism which is just less publicized, as is the case for millennials. MAGA see this as a forced conversion therapy issue. You will bend to their will and you will listen in your pens, working 28 hours days 365 days a year. For 2 meals the undesirables will be dealt with because knowledge is satanic.